Hey, what's up, everyone? Mike Lowe here again, and this recording is going to be just discussing the offseason here. Had a few people request kind of looking through the offseason, especially using some of the items from the Revamped community, not just the Revamped visuals themselves, but just a lot of the utilities and tools that are available in the community. And I'm not really going to probably go over the tools, like the how-tos of the tools too much, but just kind of the positive aftermath, I guess we'll call it, the output. So that aftermath of just kind of how everything looks once it's in the game and kind of running how it should. So here we are at the end of the season. To really give you a quick look though, let me back out and just kind of show you how the season wrapped up here. Because I had a few people just kind of request to see all that and just kind of what that looks like. And I'll also talk about the stage that you really want to make sure things are in before you get too deep into the off season, because there are certain points where you need to save this and export your franchise or your Dynasty file, I should say, to your USB, assuming you're using the PS3 version, which is what I'm doing here. So the end of the season has come and gone. You saw the last stream, we got our butts kicked by Miami, more or less, even though we technically out statistically performed them throughout the game, but nonetheless just turned the ball over way too much and lost. But so I'm 0-2 in my bowl career. But if we click back to the bowl season, I showed you this briefly of just kind of how it all looks with the national championship. But Michigan finishes a perfect season at 15-0, and they finished number 1. So Michigan beats Clemson for the national championship. And at this point, I always kind of save an end of the year file so that I can go back and I can look and just kind of look at the end of the season stats and things like that and the rosters. And so I always keep kind of an end of season file, which is what you're looking at here. And it's something I recommend, and that's why I wanted to back out and just show you really quick, just to keep it safe for that. Because again, you can look at the Heisman winners, you can look at the All-Americans, and there's just a lot of cool stuff here that you can go back and look through. Of course, statistics and all kinds of cool stuff. So that's really the first thing I do. And then obviously when you advance the week, it's going to take you to the end of the season, which we've already done. So I'm going to back out, and we're actually already past even the coach hiring. I didn't include that in this stream because it was very uneventful for me. There were no jobs that reached out to me, and really none that I would have had any interest in. Maybe the Tennessee job opened up. They played really bad, but to me it was a bit of a lateral move, simply because I liked I like Missouri right now, kind of like where we're at, and been a conference lateral move. The thing I like about Tennessee, truthfully, I love their fight song. I think their stadium's pretty amazing. They got classic uniforms, so there's a lot of stuff I liked, but nonetheless, I wasn't even in the running for the job. As far as I can tell, I did not win Coach of the Year because I didn't get it as like an XP reward, where I did the first season. But there were some coaching changes. Obviously, I won't bore you with those because you probably don't care. But just to kind of show you, now this has nothing to do with the actual revamp themselves. But nonetheless, you can see this information, or can you actually? Well, you can always see it in the database, but there's really nothing here that I do. This is just kind of just information at this point. So you can see the number of coaches that were fired and so on. Coaches that left for new jobs, and then we had a few coaches retire. Mac Brown, Herm Edwards, those guys retired. Both Michigan coordinators, by the way, did take jobs in the Pac-10. You got Josh Gaddis at Arizona State, and you have McDonald went to Cal. So they'll be rivals now in the Pac-12. Kind of cool there. So again, you can go back and look at all that. The coaching carousel itself, as I mentioned, there was nothing really there. It was much more eventful the first offseason I had. I wish I had done a video for that one. But so where we are is really the players leaving stage. And this is what I wanted to talk about most at the start of this video. And this is, of course, where your players will decide to either go pro, or they'll stick around, or they'll even transfer. And you can just play this right out of the box, but what I do is I use what's called I think it's actually called the Dynasty tool. And the first step is this here. So you'll actually export your save. You'll load it up onto your computer. You'll run it through this Dynasty tool. And what's nice is you don't even have to use any of the You don't have to use like brute force or anything like that. You just open up the file and then you just click through it, and it'll kind of do like a more educated, more realistic, players leaving early. It's like, so for instance, maybe Basilek, who had a nice year for us, maybe he will end up staying because he would have been like a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick or something, and it's like he's probably more likely to get drafted higher next year if he waits it out a little bit. Perhaps he's a 1st or 2nd round, maybe 3rd round pick. Again, he had a nice year, a huge improvement from the simulated year before I came to Missouri. And again, I think it makes a lot of sense why a guy like him would stay. So we did have 2 players who left. Jeff Coate ends up leaving, and our left tackle, and again, not leaving early, just graduating. And I mentioned Jeff Coate in the bowl game. He just had the 1 sack for us. That's crazy, because he was a really highly rated player for us, an 89 overall, and he just held his own on run defense. Still at 13 tackles for losses. But I mean, just a really strange year for him. So really not his best year for sure, which is kind of cool. I don't mind that. And then for Missouri, we also have a player, Jamal Lowe, who is transferring to Rice. He's homesick, so originally from Arlington, Texas. Gonna kind of go back up that way, up near Dallas there, and transfer to Rice. So I'm a bit bummed because he's a 6'5", 320-pound freshman this year. Not excited to see him. What I do like to look on this screen though is just looking at all teams, and you can really just kind of see like what the draft would look like. And again, these aren't like the actual picks, but just the projection. So you'll see some guys that were already picked in real life last year. So Trent McDuffie in this actually stayed another year at Washington. But you'll see some familiar names here, which is cool. Miles Murphy, going to be a big name in this year's draft. So again, he comes out at kind of the appropriate time. And so again, this tool does a really, really nice job. Like I think, and it even shows you like how many players are declaring early. And I think there were like 46 in this particular class of guys who are leaving before their senior year. So again, Will Anderson drafted in real life, or actually no, he's going to be in this year's draft. So again, he comes out early as expected. So yeah, just really, really cool. It just kind of tightens things up and makes it a little bit more realistic. So again, you don't have your quarterback, because again, my quarterback was like around here, right? He'd be, 4th or 5th round pick. If we look at the next quarterback, I mean, I don't even know if there is one this late. So it makes a lot of sense why he would stay, right? So you got lots of players transferring and so on. So it's not like it's a new feature in the game, but that first step in the utility cleans it up a great deal. And I think it's a huge addition to your Dynasty mode here as you're playing through NCAA. So our next phase here in the offseason is the transfer request stage. Also, when you advance this, you have the option to actually export your draft class for Madden 25, which there is a mod community for. I've not explored it, but just in case, I have exported my drafts the last couple seasons. Keep that file in hand, and maybe over the summer or something, as the football season starts ramping up in real life, I'll maybe look into some Madden 25 and load those classes up and just kind of see how it goes. But anyway, so here we are, and of course you can, in this area here, look at the draft results. And as expected, we had 2 guys go, 5th and 7th round. That's exactly where they were projected to go. What's the only bummer on this screen is you don't actually get to see like all teams from what I could see. You have to kind of just click through. But of course you'd expect, lots of players from Alabama going in the draft, 3 first-round draft picks there. And again, you could just really click through any of these teams you'd want. Just take a look and see. And you can see Bo Nix there going in the 6th round. So again, that's a reason there, right? Why my quarterback wouldn't have wanted to leave early. He probably would have been in that range. So again, just you can look through any of the teams you want. Maybe we'll check out Georgia and national champion Michigan team here. We can take a look at. So Trayvon Walker ends up going in this draft a year later. JT Daniels. Lewis Sign, you can see there much later than he does in real life. So, just showing a couple teams here in case anyone's interested. But of course, your own Dynasty, you can look through whatever you'd like. Again, pretty accurate. Daxton Hill, he went actually in the 1st round, towards the end of the 1st round, a year early. But nonetheless, kind of slotted where you'd expect him to be. So pretty realistic. again, credit to the game and kind of just the roster makers and so on of lining that up. And then the other part of this area, of course, transfer requests. We don't have any with Missouri, so there's not a lot to do. We did lose a player, as we saw previously. And again, there's really not much you can even do in this phase as far as like looking at your roster and things like that. So that's a bit of a bummer. But again, this isn't a NCAA review or anything. This is just kind of going through my offseason, how things are looking. So right now, fairly uneventful as we start to head to the end of the recruiting phase here, which we'll do now. Okay, so here we are in the, I guess you'd call it late recruiting phase, and should be pretty straightforward here. My recruiting is just about done, really. Here we are looking at a few players that we are still in battles with, and by the way, it kind of shows off the nice utility tool again of, and this is the third tool, and I'm forgetting the name of it. Basically, it's a website that you can go to, and you can load in your Dynasty file, and it will update the names, it'll update the numbers of incoming freshmen, and so on, so that you'll see things like these suffixes, like Jermaine Bryant II. It also matches up names to be a little bit more accurate, even like linking up with position names and things like that. And so, again, you would have like Eric Atkins and Travis Lewis, Curtis Hall. These names sound okay. Like, you're not going to have a name like Jose Mustafa or something like that. So it does a pretty nice job of kind of making names more realistic and so on. So this is something that I run at the beginning of the season so that you load them in. You also do it at the beginning of the season for the incoming freshmen. So not just the new recruiting class, but then that will assign them single-digit numbers and things like that, which is pretty cool. So again, we're in that late recruiting phase here. Not a ton to do other than really just kind of cleaning up a few things, looking for need, maybe looking to see if there's new players. I use a lot of recruiting handicaps, I guess you could call them, and just kind of house rules just to make it a little bit harder. So like, I don't scout players ahead of time. I don't add players to my board who aren't in my top 10 interest. Very rarely will I offer a scholarship to a player who doesn't have a scholarship from another school, especially if they're 4-star or 5-star. I absolutely won't do it. Sometimes if it's a position in need, I will with like a 3-star or 2-star or something like that. So here we got 10,000 points, and again, the idea is just going to be to max out kind of what we want to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of distribute these points as I see fit, and then we'll be back in just a second. Okay, so we've allocated all 10,000 points. I won't go through kind of the whys and wheres or anything like that, because again, it doesn't really pertain to what you're doing with your dynasty necessarily. But again, just looking to kind of just maximize this point value as much as we can. The only player I added was a 2-star tackle. We had a tackle transfer. We only have 2 tackles on the roster. And I think we're going after, I guess just 1. So just wanted to add some tackle depth. So again, that's one of those instances where I will kind of break my rule about not offering if another team hasn't. He's only a 2-star. He's a JUCO transfer. I don't have any problem with it. Like I said, I'll even go up to a 3-star in my own kind of list of house rules, but I will never do a 4 or 5-star player. So again, haven't scouted him, have no idea. I don't scout players until they commit. So you can just kind of see, it kind of just creates some variety. You end up recruiting some busts here. So yeah, there's the other tackle. So we'll have hopefully 2 tackles coming in. But Walter Kirkpatrick technically is a bust. But I didn't know that until we recruited him. So nonetheless, adding this other guy is more about just kind of filling out the roster a little bit. But let's just go ahead and see how it all plays out here as we advance to signing day, which of course would be the next stage. And then really after that, it's going to be position changes. And the next thing I'll end up probably talking about will be the training results, because this is the next time that we will use that Dynasty tool to update training to be more realistic. It'll update the awareness of incoming freshmen so that you actually have some like breakout true freshman players and things like that. And I believe this is also where you will get the incoming freshmen assigned proper jersey numbers and things like that. So for now, let's go ahead and advance to signing day, and we'll see how we did. And hopefully we're able to land some of these guys here. And again, Missouri, we're in a pretty decent spot. All right, so we didn't get too many. My number one target we got though, so I'm excited about that. Jared Cook, we needed to guard pretty badly. Byron Fry gives us kind of our third tight end, which I like to carry at least 3 tight ends there, so that's nice. Defensive tackle. So, boy, we lost out on a lot of guys though. I'm surprised how many guys we lost out on. I wasn't actually going after Ben Clay, but a couple other linebackers gone. Damn, I was really hoping to get Michael Austin because we're pretty short at defensive end. He was an athlete, but he goes to Purdue. Lost out on a punter, which I'm not too worried about. Damn, we lost out on both those ends. Whew, wow. And interestingly enough, Roderick People, so this is an interesting thing here. I offered him a scholarship. I didn't recruit him at all. It's the only team technically offering him a scholarship, at least from what we could see. But it looks like maybe a late scholarship came in from Mississippi State because they were able to get Roderick Peoples. So anyway, what we land, really our most important target, Jared Cook. I think I put 1,500. I originally had 3,000, but again, no other team had a scholarship on him. He was one of those other kind of players I allowed myself to break a rule, but he was just a 3-star, and we needed guards pretty badly, or else I was going to end up with walk-ons. So overall, yeah, not too bad. We will now see, I think we'll see the overall on these other guys. So we can do that real quick and just kind of see how they shaped up. Will it show us the overall? So I wonder if they'll actually be accurate now. Yeah, I think these are still the unscouted ratings because these haven't changed. It's not a single one of them. So we'll have to wait and see how these latest guys come in ranked. These guys are all scouted, so cool. So there it is. Let's take a look and see where our draft class ranked here. I think we were in the top 25 last I checked. Nope. Okay, so we're 42nd for a team ranked 21, and that's before our loss to Miami. So we recruited, I guess, kind of around where you'd expect. Maybe we overachieved with our record. We played some pretty bad teams this year, like teams that had like less than 5 wins a lot of times, like less than 3 wins even. So I think this is pretty realistic, and again, it goes to show, if you're playing as like Akron or something and you're in the top 5 recruiting every year, it's probably a little too darn easy for you. So I feel like this is a pretty good balance. An SEC team that was ranked, we didn't get a single 5-star, but they're a team that was pretty bad last year, or the year prior, with the new coach and so on. So I feel like this is a pretty good mix here. You can see I didn't like over recruit. There's a lot of teams right around that 20 recruit range and so on. So it really kind of does a nice job of keeping it realistic. And again, if you want to see more details of how I follow the kind of the house rules I've set up, there is an article on simsportsgaming.com. If you just search like NCAA house rules, is the first article that pops up on Google, and you can see I'm using like 95% of those rules. Again, I've kind of adjusted a few as I've gone and kind of progressed through a dynasty, especially a more modern dynasty. So but I do follow those pretty darn closely for the most part, so not a lot has changed. See who the top recruiting class was, by the way. Curious to see where like Georgia and Michigan. So again, the real life national champion in 2022, Georgia. Michigan right there. And I'm trying to remember who won the national championship my first season. It was either Clemson or Alabama, I feel like. But either way, you can see Miami, boy, hell of a class. They're going to be another good team. Top 5 recruiting class for them. So again, good to see some big programs up here. I'm a traditionalist. I know some people really like it when the MAC starts becoming a power. I don't. This looks pretty darn good to me. North Carolina even coming in at the top 10. Good for them. So yeah, it looks good. Looks very realistic. I'm happy with it. And again, we will advance to the position changes, which I won't really bore you with too much, but we'll talk more about the training results here as well. Alright guys, so we've gone through and adjusted the position changes. Some of those were just changes that made sense based on body size, ratings, and some of it just based on depth. I won't bore you again with those details here, but we are at the next phase here in the offseason that will require us to switch over and use one of the utilities. And this is the training results. I want to show you what the training results look like before we use the utility. And so this will not be what I go in with. But if you just wanted to kind of get a visual of how things look, so for instance, our quarterback, who was a 91, is now up to a 95. Kicker now up to a 95 himself after a +6. JJ Hester, +6. So some of these will be different. You could even see players that end up going like negative. And so we're going to be running through that, not just for our team, but all teams in college football here. So we'll take a look in just a second at what that looks like here post using the utility for the training results.
So here we are inside of the actual Dynasty tool right now, and this is looking at the progression mod. And so we have exported out of the game, loaded it into this mod, and you can see that the progression is going to look different than it would out of the box. You're going to see negative scores. You're going to see players that don't progress up or down at all. And it just creates a little bit more variety and a little bit more realism in player progression. What's nice too is you can check any team or even the entire NCAA. And so you can look at how progression looks throughout the entire league. And this is all just kind of based on just making some adjustments under the hood to, like, say, player awareness and things like that. And so it really just gives you a really nice connection to the league a little bit more, gives you a little bit more in-depth look at how certain teams or even certain conferences are progressing and so on. And again, there'll be a little bit more variety in what you'll see just out of the default way that the game handles it.
All right, guys, so we've gone through and adjusted the position changes. Some of those were just changes that made sense based on body size, ratings, and some of it just based on depth. I won't bore you again with those details here, but we are at the next phase here in the offseason that will require us to switch over and use one of the utilities. And this is the training results. I want to show you what the training results look like before we use the utility. And so this will not be what I go in with. But if you just wanted to kind of get a visual of how things look, so for instance, our quarterback, who was a 91, is now up to a 95. Kicker now up to a 95 himself after a +6. JJ Hester, +6. So some of these will be different. You could even see players that end up going like negative. And so we're going to be running through that, not just for our team, but all teams in college football here. So we'll take a look in just a second at what that looks like here post using the utility for the training results. Okay, so now we're back in the game here, and we can see what the training results look like in game. They're of course exactly what we saw in the utility itself. And if you remember, we have some subtle changes here. Like I think Basilak was like a +5 up to a 96 or so. Hester had a much bigger jump. Now he's up to a 94. Mevis, our kicker, he's a little bit lower, and so on. But you'll also see those same negative or even just kind of zero players like Williams, who didn't progress at all. And there's some negatives in here. And of course, this is for each team, which you can't see on this screen here, but you can see in the utility as we saw. You could look all throughout NCAA or by team and so on. So really, really cool. And my understanding is that utility does a lot of work with the awareness, especially of younger players and so on. You'll see some nerfing or some beefing up of other ratings and so on, just to kind of keep it a little bit more realistic, to keep it playing well with the game engine and things like that, and just to really provide a good balance. So you just have a little bit more of a kind of realistic roster balance in terms of starters being at different class levels and so on, things like that. So really, really cool work. Perhaps the best feature of the utility when you really look at the longevity of your dynasty. So we're getting pretty close here to the end. We're going to be jumping into the cutting player stage here, which I will do offline because it's not really that exciting. But of course, just kind of cutting some of the dead weight, whether it's a low rating or if I just want to free up more scholarships, maybe make a position more appealing if I have some roadblocks and things like that I want to just free up. So we'll be doing that. And then really after that, it's going to be setting up for the next season, perhaps some custom conference changes. Do I want to expand the SEC for Texas and Oklahoma? Just things like that. And then in the preseason phase is when we will load in the actual new draft class, the generated draft class using the draft class tool website that I'll show you, and also where we will load up and get the accurate freshman player numbers and things like that for the new freshmen that we just loaded in from this last recruiting session. So hang tight for that. The last thing we're going to be doing here before we advance to the preseason phase, which is when we will update the existing on-campus freshmen with their jersey numbers and things like that, and also the new recruiting class. I do want to go over just some of the adjustments I made with my conferences in case it helps. It's obviously kind of a weird situation lately. A lot of teams kind of jumping around again like it happened a number of years ago. And so I've kind of done my best to set things up with kind of like the future projection of these conferences, at least for the 2023 season. But I also took some liberties to kind of adjust a few things around and get a kind of a functional Conference USA. So the SEC, there were no changes, but let's just kind of go in order. ACC, no changes. So again, you can get a look there. American, I know I removed at least one team. It was like one of the military academy schools, I believe, or maybe Tulane, or not Tulane, Temple, maybe, I forget. But I did take a team out of there. They keep a conference championship game. Big 12 looks a little bit different. Again, just with the kind of the projected updates with BYU, Cincinnati, and so on, Houston. So I got that set up. The Big 10 is unchanged. The Conference USA is by far the most different. I just tried to kind of pull some teams to make a decent conference here. We got the 3 military academies in one conference, which I thought was cool. Appalachian State is in, as well as Western Kentucky, which I thought would make a decent rivalry, even Middle Tennessee State there. And then some of the teams that were just left over, I mentioned Temple I moved. And I believe FIU was already there. So again, it's just kind of a mishmash conference. I will be making some adjustments to that conference in the future, but for this season, that's what we're going to go with. Notre Dame is the only independent. The MAC stays unchanged. Mountain West just had one team taken out, which was Air Force, so they actually lose their conference championship game. Excuse me, but I can live with that. I figured in real life, a team conference with Hawaii in it, that's some serious road trips going on for Hawaii, so I don't think it's unfathomable for them to remove that conference championship game. Pac-12 remains unchanged. Showed you the SEC and the Sun Belt again, very minor. Just removed one team there to kind of balance this back out with some other teams moving in, like Marshall and so on. So that's where our conferences are looking here. Again, conference rules, nothing really major there, just making sure that the proper teams had conference championship games and the location set, things like that, which of course you can do on these menus here. So just making sure that, especially when you kind of go from a conference that used to have one, and then maybe in your dynasty they don't, now they do again, just making sure that you have this set up properly. I did keep protected rivals off, even though I want Oklahoma and Texas to play. There just weren't really any other protected rivalries that I thought were interesting enough. So we're just going to leave that off for now, and I guess hopefully they still play, and when they do play, it'll be even more special game there. And again, with those teams moving to the SEC soon, not terribly worried, and I doubt the Big 12 would lose any sleep over kind of fussing over those two teams at this point. So yeah, that's how the conference alignment looks. We'll be back here when we check out how things look in the preseason. Okay, so here we are in the preseason, and this is where the college revamp community really shines for me the most. And this is using, there's various different tools, so there's a couple different ones you could look around at. I believe the one I'm using is like mjavon or something like that. And it's like a recruit tool. It's actually a website, so if you just search for it, again, I think it's mjavon or something like that. You can go in there and you'll need to kind of look up how to do this if you're unsure, and this is not the video for that, but basically you're extracting a couple of Excel documents, CSV documents specifically, from the actual game database. So you'll need to get familiar with those game editors. That's super easy. It's not difficult. There's tons of tutorials out there. You load in the player data, you load in the recruit data, and then there's a couple modules that you can run on this website that will make some really, really cool changes. So let's take a look at what those are. So there's a couple that are under the hood that you won't really probably see, but there's like an awareness buff that will happen with some of the freshmen, and these are all interchangeable, right? You can click these on or off if you don't want to use all of the modules, or you want to just use maybe one or two. You can do that. it'll also go through and it will remove, say, like duplicate names. So there was a guy named like Clayton, and I think it said it changed his name to like Clayton Wolf or something like that. And so it'll do that. It will go through and actually match up player names with their ethnicity, and it'll match up the proper, like an image and that sort of thing, where it'll make a little bit more sense. You'll also see like this. You'll see hyphenated names. So Maxie Rollins, that's something that the module will do. So again, as you click through, you can start to see whether some of these names and they kind of make sense and so on. And again, this is just what's kind of baked into the actual module itself. It'll go through and adjust some of these names and so on, and again match them up with images. What's nice about the hyphenated names, and also, by the way, suffixes in names, so like junior or like the fourth. So here's like Mike Smith Jr. There was another one down here I saw, Burdett Harris Jr. What's cool is you can set the frequency on these, and so you can make it where like every single recruit is a junior, or you can make it where none, and you can set the percentage basically, or the ratio, and you can do that for both hyphenated names and the suffixes, which are like the juniors or the seniors or the second, the third, the fourth. You can set the ratio for those individually. So super cool. So let's see what else they do. So they nerfed, or they adjust the awareness I mentioned, the names, the matching up of the duplicate names and that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of the gist for the recruits, but it just adds so much more realism. This module will also impact your incoming freshmen or JUCO transfers, in that it will adjust their player numbers. And so you're not going to see it so much, say, with like a freshman quarterback. He took number 16, that's fine. But check this out. My freshman running back has taken jersey number 19. And again, that's after running it through the module. And it's not every single time. Like, I have a freshman this year who took 89, whereas our big freshman recruit last year, who we redshirted with his 93 speed, took jersey number 3. It gets really cool when, here we have there was a defensive tackle on the team, took jersey number 9. Freaking cool, right? So even cooler is it's kind of the opposite with your kickers. So my freshman kicker is jersey number 94. He's not taking up a cool single-digit number. My punter from last year is number 88. So again, really cool modules. Just adds a ton to the realism, and it's pretty flawless, and it's super easy once you get used to it. The first time will take you a little time. I mean, it's something you just have to kind of work through. My recommendation would be to take some notes for yourself. I have a little folder I just keep on my computer of just kind of the different notes so that I remember, and it's super easy when I do that just to kind of follow it along, almost like a recipe, and then you can cook up your Dynasty and really make it cool, really make it special. So that's it, guys. We are ready for the 2023 Missouri Tigers season in the SEC. It's Coach Lowe's second year with Missouri, third year overall. We'll be streaming more of these games as we go. And if you got questions, ask. But again, I would highly recommend checking out the Revamped community on Discord. They're going to have far clearer answers to a lot of the stuff that you're probably going to want to ask me. So check that out, and just use their search feature, because most of the questions have been asked hundreds of times by others, and you'll already find answers a lot quicker than waiting for someone to respond to you. So that's it, guys. I appreciate you watching. I'm Mike Lowe. You can find me on Twitter at MikeLowe47 and at simsportsgaming.com. I will see you guys here in the 2023 season.